My name is Lisa Blackwood. And if someone had told me at 67 years old I'd be starting over, not just financially, but emotionally, I wouldn't have believed them. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. Lived here most of my life. Small town living, quiet streets, wide skies. I raised all three of my children here. Alone. My husband, Warren, died in a factory accident when I was just 34. One moment, he kissed me goodbye on a Tuesday morning. The next, I was sitting across from a man in a suit telling me they did everything they could. I didn't have time to grieve the way people talk about in books. I had mouths to feed and bills that didn't care. I was now a widow with 3 children under the age of 10. Before I continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Let me know in the comments below. I had always been good with my hands. Sewing, stitching, shaping. Warren used to joke that I could fix a torn belt faster than he could break one. So I leaned into what I knew. I started handcrafting leather wallets and belts in the garage while the kids slept. At first, I sold a few pieces to neighbors. Then at craft fairs. Then a boutique in town wanted to carry them. One thing led to another. And by the time I hit 50, I was running a small but solid leather goods business. I called it 3 Pines Leather, named after the 3 pine trees in our backyard, and my 3 kids. It wasn't flashy, but it paid for school supplies, groceries, car repairs, and kept the roof over our heads. It gave me purpose. After 35 years, the business had grown far beyond anything I'd imagined. I had 8 employees, a small warehouse, and loyal customers across the state. Last year, a larger company made an offer to buy me out. $10.5 million. It didn't feel real. Even when I signed the papers and saw the numbers in my bank account, I still half expected someone to say it was a mistake. I didn't sell to live some fancy life. I sold because I was tired. My back ached more than it used to. My hands felt stiff by mid-afternoon. I miss my grandkids. I wanted to slow down and maybe spend time in a garden instead of a workshop. That money was supposed to bring peace. What it brought was something else entirely. My daughters, Ruby and Faith, were proud of me. They live in Washington and Ohio now, with families of their own. They've always been more grounded, steady jobs, reliable partners, and a good sense of when to say no. They called to celebrate, joked about me becoming fancy, and then reminded me to get a good financial planner. I listened. Then there was Marcus, my only son. He's 42 now, but in some ways, he still feels like that restless teenager who never stayed put. He was the baby of the family, and after Warren died, I'll admit, I coddled him more than the girls. I didn't mean to. Maybe I just saw too much of his father in him. Marcus was always full of ideas. He bounced from one job to another, car sales, roofing, selling energy drinks, even started a podcast once. Nothing stuck. Every time something didn't work out, there was a reason. His boss was a jerk. The economy was bad. Someone else ruined it. And every time he called, needing just a little help, I gave it 1,000 here, 500 there. He always promised to pay me back. He never did. Still, I kept hoping, kept believing that one day he'd figure it out, that he'd settle down, maybe meet someone, find work he liked. That was my mistake, thinking time would fix what parenting hadn't. When I told him about the sale, Marcus acted happy for me, but I could tell something shifted in his tone. He started dropping hints about opening a gym or investing in a car flipping business. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. He knew better than to ask directly. He just lingered around more, asked a lot of questions, tried to be extra helpful. I convinced myself he was just proud of me. I wanted to believe that. After meeting with my financial planner, we decided the best route was to create a trust, something to protect the money long term and make sure it was passed down the right way. But it would take a few days to get everything finalized. In the meantime, I needed a secure place to store the money. Not just digitally. I'd withdrawn $10 million in cashier's checks and cash, as advised, to place into the trust once it was fully active. We still had the old reinforced family safe in the basement. Warren had it installed years ago after a break-in down the street. It was built into the concrete and had a timed locking system. We used to joke that if the house burned down, that safe would be the last thing standing. So I decided to use it just for 48 hours. Marcus was visiting that week. I told him what I was doing, and without hesitation, he offered to help carry the bags down. Each one heavy, full of paper that carried the weight of nearly 4 decades of hard work. He whistled low when he picked one up, joked, "Feels like treasure, Mom." I laughed a little, told him to be careful, and when we sealed the safe that night, I felt a strange mixture of pride, relief, and something I couldn't name at the time. Now, looking back, I know exactly what it was. Doubt. The kind you bury because you don't want to face what it really means. That was the last night everything felt normal. The next morning, my life changed. I woke up that morning to the sound of nothing. No coffee brewing, no footsteps upstairs, no humming from Marcus while he made toast. Just quiet, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful, more like something's wrong. At first, I thought maybe he stepped out for a walk. He did that sometimes, especially in the mornings. Said the Arizona air helped him think better. But something in me knew it wasn't that. There was a weight in my chest before I even swung my feet off the bed. I padded down the hallway in my slippers, calling his name softly. "Marcus." No answer. The guest room door was wide open. The bed was made, the suitcase he brought was gone, and his charger was unplugged from the wall. I looked around for his shoes, his coat, anything that might say he was still here. Nothing. I went to the kitchen next, and that's where I saw it, a folded sheet of paper, sitting right beside the sugar jar. My name written on the front in that familiar slanted handwriting. I didn't even open it right away. My fingers hovered over it for a few seconds, hoping it was something else. But deep down, I already knew. I unfolded it slowly, trying to hold back the feeling that was creeping up my spine. "Don't worry, Mom. You always said I needed a fresh start. Thanks for the investment. I'll be in touch when I've figured things out." That was it. No apology. No warning. Just a thank you for stealing from his own mother. I dropped the paper onto the counter and walked straight to the basement. My heart was pounding so loud, I could barely hear myself breathe. The bookcase that covered the safe was slightly ajar. I didn't even remember leaving it that way. The safe was open, empty. My knees buckled, but I didn't let myself fall. I just stood there staring into it, like maybe the bags would appear if I blinked hard enough. But they didn't. The shelves were bare. Gone. All of it. $10 million. I leaned against the wall, my arms shaking. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even thinking about the money itself. All I could feel was this deep, hollow ache, the kind you feel when someone you raised looks you in the eye, then turns their back on you. I went back upstairs, picked up my phone, and called Ruby first. She answered on the third ring, cheerful like always. "Hey, Mama, everything okay?" "No," I said, barely able to get the words out. "Marcus is gone." "What do you mean gone?" "He took the money." There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "All of it?" "Yes." She didn't ask for more details right away. Just let out a long sigh. I hate to say it, but I'm not shocked. I told her about the note. She didn't curse or scream. She just said, "I'll call Faith." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. A part of me hoped he'd walk through the door, say it was a prank, that he was testing me or something. But I knew better. That afternoon, I called the sheriff's office. A deputy named Connors came out, took my statement, and wrote everything down carefully. "Did he have access to the safe before this?" he asked. "He helped me carry the bags in." I said, "But he didn't know the code. Could he have watched you enter it?" I nodded. I didn't think much of it at the time. He scratched something onto his clipboard. "Did you tell anyone else about the money being here?" "No, just him and my attorney." Connors looked up from his notes. "We'll do what we can, ma'am. But if he's crossed state lines, or worse, left the country, it'll be hard, especially if it was taken without physical force. Family money cases get messy. Is there anything you can do? We can put out a bulletin, alert other departments. But you need to understand, if there's no sign of a break-in, and if he's your son, he might say it was a gift. Without a contract, that'll be tricky in court." I nodded, though the words barely landed. He meant well, I could tell. But it didn't help. Nothing did. After he left, I sat in the living room, trying to make sense of it. I thought about the night before, how normal it had all felt. We'd had chicken salad sandwiches, watched an old detective show on TV. He even kissed my cheek goodnight. Now, I was sitting here wondering where he was, what he was doing, and if he'd ever planned to return at all. Later that night, Faith called me. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I said. "I don't feel anything yet. Just empty. He's not your responsibility anymore, Mama, but he's still my son." "I know, and you loved him the best way you knew how." We didn't say much else, just stayed on the phone for a while. Her silence felt more comforting than any words would have. By the time I went to bed, the house felt different, not just because it was quieter. It felt like something had shifted, like some part of my foundation had cracked, and I didn't know yet if it could be fixed. I laid there staring at the ceiling, thinking about every time I defended him, every time I told someone he just needed more time, every loan, every second chance. Now he was gone, and so was everything I had worked my whole life to build. And I still hadn't cried. Not yet. If your heart dropped like mine just did, hit the like button. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been blindsided by someone you trusted the most? I sat on the back porch that morning with a cup of coffee I never drank. The birds chirped like nothing happened, like the world hadn't turned upside down overnight. I kept staring out at the backyard. Same patch of grass, same rose bushes I'd trimmed 1,000 times. But it all felt different now, like even the yard knew. I kept thinking about Marcus, not just the grown man who walked out with the money. I thought about the little boy who used to drag his blanket into my bed when he had nightmares, who cried when his goldfish died, and told me he'd never love anything that much again. He was always a sweet kid, quick to smile, quick to say sorry. But even back then, I saw the signs. He never liked being told no. If I said he couldn't have something, he'd wear me down with charm or sulking until I gave in. The older he got, the smoother he got. In high school, he was popular without trying, the kind of boy who could talk himself out of trouble. I remember the first time a teacher called me about him cheating on a test. I sat him down and asked him why he'd done it. He looked me right in the eye and said, "The test was unfair." And somehow, even then, I believed he really thought that. After Warren died, the girls stepped up. Ruby got a part-time job at 16. Faith helped me around the house without being asked. But Marcus, he pulled away. He was angry for a long time. Angry at the world, at his sisters, at me, and when he didn't get his way, he'd make you feel like you were the one who had done something wrong. He dropped out of community college after a year, said school wasn't for him, said the professors were narrow-minded. I didn't argue. I told him to figure out what he wanted instead. That's when he started the landscaping business. I remember sitting at the kitchen table as he laid out his plan: flyers, a borrowed truck, cheap tools. He talked fast, full of excitement, said he just needed a small loan to get it going. I wrote him a check for $5,000 that night. It lasted 8 months. He called me one afternoon and said he couldn't keep up with the bills. His clients weren't paying on time. He said his business partner had flaked. I offered to help him reorganize. He told me I didn't understand how the business world worked, so I just paid off the remaining debt and told him to move back in for a while. The pattern continued. One idea after another. A smoothie cart, then flipping used cars. Then he wanted to build an app, though he couldn't code. Each time, he made it sound like the breakthrough was just around the corner. Each time, I believed him. The rehab came after his breakup with a woman named Dana. That was the first time I truly got scared. He called me one night, slurring his words, crying about how he was lost. I drove 3 hours to pick him up and took him to a center outside of Phoenix. He stayed 30 days, said it changed his life. I paid for the program and helped cover his rent when he got out. Then there was the DUI. He never told the girls about that one. It was late at night. No one was hurt. He called me from the station and asked me not to tell anyone. He promised it would never happen again. I paid the fine and the lawyer, and we never spoke of it again. The thing is, Marcus never saw himself as the problem. It was always the economy, or his bad luck, or other people who didn't believe in him. Once he told me that I was the only one who never gave up on him. At the time, it felt like a compliment. Now, it feels like something else. The girls tried to warn me. Ruby said it plain once. "Mama, he's using you." I got defensive. He's my son. What am I supposed to do? Cut him off. Faith was more gentle. "Just be careful," she said. "Sometimes helping isn't helping." But I couldn't stop. Every time he came to me, I saw that little boy who needed his mama. And every time, I thought, maybe this time he meant it. I was wrong. Every time. Now, sitting there on that porch, I started adding it all up. The money, the favors, the lies. And what hit me the hardest wasn't the amount. It was the years. How many years I spent patching holes he poked into his own life. I started wondering when it shifted. When did I go from being a mother to a bank? From someone he leaned on to someone he stole from? Maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe it was little cuts, little choices that I ignored for too long. And then the guilt started to mix with the anger. How did I not see this coming? How did I keep trusting someone who'd never shown he could carry that trust? The truth is, I didn't want to believe he'd do this. I didn't want to admit I raised someone who would, but I did. I went inside and picked up the note again. Read the words for the 10th time. "Thanks for the investment." He really thought of it that way, like I owed it to him, like I was just another tool to get where he wanted to go. That was the moment something changed in me. The tears finally came. Quiet ones, not loud or dramatic, just steady, like they'd been waiting their turn. I wasn't crying for the money. I was crying for all the years I spent loving someone who only loved me when it was convenient. 2 days after Marcus disappeared, I drove across town to meet with Royce Palmer, my estate attorney. He's been with me for years, handled the sale of my business, helped me write up my will, set up the trust for the kids and grandkids. He's the kind of man who doesn't sugarcoat anything, and that's exactly what I needed. His office was quiet that morning. I sat across from him at the same desk where we'd signed the deal for 3 Pines Leather just a few months earlier. That day, we celebrated with sparkling cider and a handshake. This time, I walked in with a manila folder in one hand and a sick feeling in my stomach. I didn't wait for small talk. I opened the folder and handed him the note Marcus left, along with a copy of the bank withdrawal forms and a photo of the empty safe. Royce read the note twice. Then he looked up at me, eyebrows slightly raised. "You said all the funds were in the safe." "Yes. Cash and cashier's checks. 10 million even. It was only supposed to be there for 48 hours while the trust paperwork cleared." He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands together. "And there's no written agreement between you and Marcus regarding this money?" I shook my head. He helped me put the bags into the safe. "That's it." Royce let out a slow breath. "Lisa, I know this is hard to hear, but we might have a problem because Marcus is your son, and because there's no legal documentation that this money wasn't meant for him. It could be seen as a gift. Or worse, just a misunderstanding." My jaw tightened. A misunderstanding doesn't come with a note like that. I agree, but the law doesn't always see things the way we do. Family disputes like this tend to get murky. Judges often avoid calling it theft unless there's something concrete, like a written contract, video proof, or an official trust in place. "He took the money without my permission," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I believe you," Royce said, "but proving that in court, especially if he claims you gave it to him, will be tough." I didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at the photo of the safe sitting open and hollow. Royce looked through some paperwork on his desk. "There is something we can try," he added. "We can start by running a background poll. See if he's made any moves with the money. Bank activity, large purchases, anything that can lead us to him." I nodded. "Do whatever you need to." He got up and stepped into the hallway, told his assistant to begin the trace. When he came back, he held a printed sheet in his hand. "You're not going to like this," he said, handing it to me. It was a credit report, my name, my social security number, and a new credit line, opened 6 months ago. Marcus had taken out a $30,000 loan under my name. No missed payments yet, but the balance was almost maxed out. "I never signed up for this," I said, voice flat. Royce nodded. "It looks like identity fraud. He must have had access to your documents, driver's license, maybe your bank details. It happens more often than people think." My stomach turned. So he was planning this. "At least partially," Royce said, "taking money out in your name, setting up an exit plan, leaving that note. None of this was spontaneous." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This was thought out. Quiet. Calculated. Royce leaned forward. "Lisa, we still have options. There's a paper trail on the trust funds, and with the help of a financial investigator, we might be able to follow the money. If he tries to move it through banks or certain platforms, we can flag it. I want to do that. Now." He nodded. "I'll have our financial team start immediately." That afternoon, while I sat in my living room trying to catch my breath, my phone rang. It was Denise, my financial advisor. "Lisa, I have an update on the trust account," she said. "We just got a flag from the bank's fraud department." "What happened?" "Someone attempted to wire a large sum, close to $750,000, to a crypto exchange based in the Bahamas." I closed my eyes. "Marcus." "Most likely," she said. "The transfer didn't go through. The bank's identity check failed. Your name didn't match the initiating party. It was caught just in time. Can we trace it?" "We're already on it. The attempt leaves a digital footprint. It's not enough to pin him legally, not yet, but it gives us a location and a lead." She paused. "He may have more of your information than we thought." That night, I sat at the kitchen table, looking through old papers and account logins, trying to figure out how long he'd been watching me this closely. My passwords, my files, even where I kept my checkbooks. He'd seen it all. He'd waited. And then he made his move. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was mad. and I wasn't going to sit and do nothing. Pause for a moment. How would you feel if your own child planned behind your back like this? Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt used by someone you raised. The day after I got the call about the failed wire transfer, I was sitting in my garage sorting through old business files when I heard a knock on the side door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I saw a familiar face, Marcel. He used to work part-time in my shop years ago when he was fresh out of high school. A quiet kid, respectful, good with his hands. He'd always gotten along with Marcus back then. They used to hang around after hours, sometimes helping me finish up orders or loading boxes. "Hi, Miss Lisa," he said, shifting nervously on his feet. "I hope it's okay I stopped by." I nodded and stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." He followed me into the kitchen, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his jeans. "I heard about what happened," he said, eyes downcast. "About Marcus." I didn't answer right away. I just waited. "I should have come sooner," he went on, "but I wasn't sure if I should get involved." "Involved how?" He looked up at me, guilt all over his face. "We talked a few times over the last year, mostly casual stuff. But one night, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, we met up for drinks. That's when he started going on about you." "Go on," I said. "He told me you'd sold the business. Said you were sitting on a small fortune. Then he laughed and said, 'She doesn't even lock her stuff right. I could walk in and take it, and she'd probably make me a sandwich after.'" My stomach turned. "He said that?" Marcel nodded slowly. "Yeah, and then he said something like, 'She's got a big heart and a soft head. Always did. She'll hand it over eventually, just like everything else.'" I sat down. Not because I was weak, but because I needed to plant my feet somewhere before the floor shifted again. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked him. He looked me dead in the eye. "Because the way he talked about you, like you were nothing, that didn't sit right. You always treated me decent, even when I messed up orders or showed up late. You didn't deserve that." I nodded, pressing my lips together. "There was one more thing," he added. "I didn't understand it at the time, but maybe it means something now. He joked about a real safe once. Said, for all I know, she probably keeps the real cash in some hidden floorboard like those old mob movies." Then he laughed it off. My heart stopped for a second. A hidden floorboard. I stood up without a word and walked straight to the basement. Marcel followed, confused but quiet. In the far corner of the room, behind where I used to keep inventory, there was a raised wood platform Warren had built decades ago. It looked like just part of the floor, but I knew better. Back when we were first starting the business, Warren got paranoid after someone tried to break into the shop. He built a small hidden safe beneath a false floorboard, big enough to store documents or cash. We stopped using it years ago. Marcus never even knew it existed. I moved a few old boxes aside and pulled up the board with both hands. It was heavy, but it came loose with a loud crack. There it was, tucked beneath the floor, sealed tight. The combination was still the same. I turned the dial slowly. Click. The door swung open, and there they were, 3 black duffel bags. I opened the first one and saw the stacks, cash neatly bundled, exactly as I'd packed them. The second held the cashier's checks. The third was full of documentation and receipts. The money was all there. I dropped to my knees, not crying, not even shaking, just still. Marcel stood behind me, stunned. "You didn't know?" "I forgot." I whispered. I honestly forgot. I remembered now. About a week before the sale went through, Royce had mentioned putting the money somewhere separate, just in case something went wrong with the bank. He suggested using a private location. I'd agreed to stash it temporarily in the hidden safe, but in the chaos of setting up the trust and finalizing everything, I'd ended up storing duplicate bags, weighted and sealed, to look like the real thing. The bags Marcus took were decoys. He stole the wrong money. I stood up slowly, a feeling rising in my chest I hadn't felt in weeks. Not revenge. Not even relief. Clarity. He thought he'd won. Thought he played me. But he never saw the real game. Marcel shook his head, still trying to process it. So, he's out there flashing fake bills. Looks like it, I said. He smiled, almost in disbelief. Guess karma got tired of waiting. I put the board back over the safe and stood tall. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I'd spent days feeling like a fool, like I'd lost everything. But now, I realized I hadn't lost a thing. He had. He just didn't know it yet. I stood in the basement with Marcel, staring at the 3 duffel bags. After everything, after all the panic and pain, there they were, untouched. It was almost too much to take in. Part of me thought maybe I was dreaming, but the cool air in that old basement and the weight of truth settled real quick. Marcel looked from the bags to me. So this is the real money. I nodded. Every cent. He let out a long whistle. So what did Marcus take? Nothing, I said. Well, he took what looked real. But those bags were decoys, filled with bundles of blank paper, and some weighted padding to match the weight of cash. He stared at me, mouth slightly open. You're telling me he walked out of here thinking he hit the jackpot, and he's carrying garbage? I nodded again, slower this time. That's exactly what happened. And then, for the first time since Marcus disappeared, I smiled. Not out of spite. Not because I wanted revenge, but because finally something made sense. I pulled a stool over and sat down. Let me explain what happened. A few weeks before the business sale closed, Royce and Denise, the financial planner, both sat me down. They said it was important to think about security, not just the usual kind. Personal security, family security. Royce asked if anyone close to me might try to take advantage of the situation. I shrugged, said no, not really. But then I paused. He saw it. Who are you thinking about? He asked. I hesitated, then said Marcus's name. Not because I believed he would do something like this, but because I noticed things. Him asking a lot of questions about my accounts, about the safe, about the timing. At the time, I chalked it up to curiosity, but Royce didn't like it. He suggested we prepare a backup, something that could keep the real money secure if anything went wrong. That's when I remembered the old hidden safe under the basement floor. I told him about it, and he loved the idea. We decided to quietly store the real cash and checks there a few days before Marcus came to visit. Then, the night Marcus arrived, I made sure everything else, the decoy bags, looked exactly right. Same black canvas, same weight, same zip ties. From the outside, you'd never know. Marcel laughed, leaning against the wall. So all that stress, all those news alerts, all that panic was over fake money. Yes, I said, smiling again. But I didn't know if he'd actually take it. I thought maybe he'd just think about it. Maybe snoop or ask. But I never imagined he'd actually do it. Well, he did. He sure did. Marcel shook his head and let out another quiet laugh. So, he's out there right now, probably trying to spend that money, trying to flash it around, probably showing off. I could picture it. Him walking into some fancy store, acting like a big shot, pulling out stacks of paper, and expecting the world to open its doors. It almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. He played himself, Marcel said. He did, I said softly. And then we sat in silence for a moment, me thinking about everything that led here. Him probably wondering how he got involved in the middle of it. I know it's not my business, Marcel said after a minute. But what are you going to do now? I don't know yet, I admitted. There's a part of me that wants to go after him. Show him he didn't win. Make sure he knows I wasn't fooled. But another part of me feels like, what's the point? He's already made his choice. He thought he was robbing me, but in the end, he only took himself further away. Marcel nodded. That makes sense. He didn't just steal or try to steal money. He broke something between us. And I don't think that can be fixed. I stood up and zipped the bags closed, sealing the safe again and sliding the floorboard back into place. The familiar weight of it was almost comforting now. I'm going to let my lawyer and planner know, I said. We'll move the funds into the trust and finish what we started. Quietly. And Marcus, I'm not going to chase him, I said, but I'm not going to protect him anymore either. Marcel looked at me, thoughtful. Do you want me to keep quiet about all this? I shook my head. No, tell whoever you want. I don't need to hide it. Let him know people are watching. Let him wonder what's coming next. He grinned. I can do that. We walked back upstairs, and as the door closed behind us, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not because the money was safe, but because I wasn't a fool. I wasn't helpless. I hadn't been played. Marcus had counted on me being weak. But what he didn't know, and what he was about to find out, was that I didn't get where I am by being anyone's fool. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and exhaled. For the first time since that note showed up on my counter, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't heartbroken. I was clear. Let him have the fake bags. I still had everything that mattered. If that twist caught you by surprise, hit subscribe and don't look back. Justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it's knowing the truth first. 2 weeks passed. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't try to find him. I didn't do anything except wait. Then one morning, while sipping my coffee on the porch, Ruby called. She didn't even say hello. Mama, did you see it? See what? Marcus. He's all over Instagram. I opened the app, which I barely used except to peek at pictures of the grandkids. It took me a minute to find it. Then there it was. A selfie of Marcus standing on a beach in Miami. Shirt open, sunglasses on, a drink in one hand, the caption, winning season. I scrolled down. Another post, him at what looked like a luxury car rental spot. A third, posing beside a yacht with some woman I didn't recognize. Same grin, same false confidence. I didn't feel anger. Not anymore. I felt tired. It was like watching someone put on a show they didn't know was already canceled. Later that day, Royce called. You're not going to believe this, he said. I got confirmation from a contact at the financial tracking firm. Every major transaction Marcus has tried to make with the stolen cash, denied. Because it's not real money, I said. Exactly. He's been using it to flash around. But as soon as anything needs to be verified or deposited, it fails. It's only a matter of time before someone figures it out. I didn't say much. I just sat there, holding the phone, thinking about how long it would take for him to realize he hadn't taken anything at all. A few days later, I got a message from a woman I didn't know. It said, "Hi, I met your son in Florida. He said he was starting a business and needed investors. I gave him $5,000. Then he stopped responding. I found your number online. I'm just trying to understand what happened." Then another message came. This one from a man in Texas. "Lisa, sorry to bother you. I worked with Marcus a few years ago. He called me recently saying he had an opportunity and needed a short-term loan. I sent him $2,000. Now, I think I made a mistake. Please advise." There were 4 messages like that by the end of the week. People who believed his story. People who trusted him. And now they were trying to trace the mess he'd left behind. I didn't reply to any of them. What could I say? That he conned them just like he tried to con me? It's a strange thing, watching someone destroy their own credibility in real time. It would have broken me once. Now it just made me sad. Not for me, For him. Then one night, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and typed a post. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say at first, but the words came out plain and simple. Not everything that looks like a blessing is real. Some things are just well-wrapped warnings. I'm grateful for decoys. They taught me what to protect and who to protect it from. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't explain. I just posted it. 10 minutes later, I saw his name pop up in the views. Good. I didn't need to say more. A few days later, both my daughters came to visit. It wasn't planned. They just showed up together on a Sunday with takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the patio, eating and talking like we used to before everything got complicated. At one point, Ruby turned to me and said, "You look different, Mama." Different how? Lighter. Faith nodded. "You really do. Like you've let go of something." I looked out at the garden and thought for a second. I think I finally got tired of carrying what didn't belong to me. They were quiet for a moment. I used to think being a good mother meant always being available, always giving, always saying yes, even when it hurt. Faith reached over and squeezed my hand. But I realize now, I said, sometimes love means stepping back, saying no, letting them live with the weight of their choices. Ruby smiled. "That's a hard lesson." "It is," I said, "but I'm learning." We talked for hours that day, laughed, cried a little, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like someone who'd been robbed. I felt like someone who'd reclaimed herself. That night, after the girls left and the house was quiet again, I checked my phone one more time. No new messages from Marcus. No calls. Nothing. But I didn't expect any. He knew I knew, and I had nothing more to prove. From here on out, whatever happened next, whatever road he went down, that was his to walk. Not mine. I wasn't chasing anymore. I'd already won. A month later, I sold the house. It was strange at first, walking through those empty rooms one last time. Every corner held a memory, some sweet, some heavy. I touched the frame of the kitchen doorway, where I'd measured the kids' heights in pencil over the years. I smiled at the tiny mark labeled Marcus, age 10, standing just a few inches under Faith's. But I didn't cry. I felt ready. I bought a small home outside Eugene, Oregon, just 20 minutes from Ruby's place. One level, easy to manage, with a little backyard and a sunroom that got warm light in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet, full of folks around my age. It felt calm, simple, enough. The day I moved in, Ruby helped me unpack. As she opened a box of cookbooks, she turned to me and said, "It suits you, Mama." And it did. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to hold everything together. I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight, just mine. I started spending time at the local library. They had weekly workshops for older adults, gardening, quilting, small business basics. One afternoon, I sat in on a session about entrepreneurship for seniors. The speaker was kind, but clearly hadn't lived much of what she was teaching. I raised my hand to add something, and after the session, a few women came up to ask more questions. That's when the idea came to me. I remembered all the women I'd met over the years, women who were smart, capable, full of grit, but never had the support to turn their talents into something more. So I talked to Royce and Denise again, and we got to work setting up something new. I called it the Real Safe, a small grant fund and mentorship circle for women over 60 who wanted to start home-based businesses, crafts, consulting, catering, whatever they were good at. No interest, no strings, just a safe place to build something of their own. People asked me why I picked that name. I just smiled and said, because what's truly safe is what you build for yourself. The first 3 recipients were local, a retired nurse who made handmade soaps, a grandmother with a pie recipe that people lined up for, and a quiet woman named Jean who had an eye for embroidery. Each of them reminded me a little of myself. Starting over, not because they failed, but because they finally had the chance. 2 months after the move, Marcus called. I recognized the number before I picked up. A Florida area code. No voicemail. Just silence. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the phone. And then I answered. He didn't waste time. "Mom, I know what you did." I said nothing. "You switched the bags. You knew I was going to take it, didn't you?" Still, I stayed quiet. "I don't know how you could do that to me," he said, his voice low and bitter. "You made me look stupid. I'm out here with nothing." That's when I spoke. "You took what you thought mattered most. But what I protected can't be stolen. My peace, my wisdom, and my future." He didn't respond right away, just breathed on the other end of the line. "I needed that money," he said eventually. "I had plans." "No, Marcus," I said softly. "You had habits, and they were never going to change until the help stopped." He tried to interrupt, but I didn't let him. "I will always love you, but I'm done saving you. I've done it your whole life, and all it did was make you believe you didn't have to save yourself." There was silence again. Then, finally, he said, "So that's it? That's it." And I hung up, not out of spite, not in anger, just because there was nothing left to say. No more chasing, no more hoping. I wasn't waiting for a changed version of him to show up someday. I had finally accepted what was. A week later, I was back at the library, leading a session on starting a home business with little money and a lot of life experience. We sat in a circle. No podiums, no big speeches. Just real women, real ideas, real effort. Afterward, a woman named Lorraine, early 70s with silver curls and a quiet voice, stayed behind. "I almost didn't come today," she said. "Felt like maybe I was too late to be starting something new." I looked her in the eye and said, "It's never too late, is it?" She smiled. "No, ma'am. It's just right on time." That night, I sat in my sunroom, watching the last bit of light fall over the garden. I thought about all the things I'd lost, and all the things I'd found. I'd spent decades thinking that being strong meant carrying everyone else. But real strength, I'd learned, was knowing when to let go. To anyone listening, if you've ever loved someone who only saw what they could take from you, if you've ever been made to feel like your kindness was weakness, I want you to hear this. You're not alone. And you're not foolish for caring. But caring doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of someone else's choices forever. So let me ask you, have you ever reached a moment when you knew it was time to stop saving someone and start saving yourself? What was your turning point? And how did it change you? Comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this story meant something to you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. There are more real stories coming because it's never too late to choose peace.